Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm going to knock out a quick deconstruction of this photo here. I got a noticeable number of questions about it, and I think that's mostly coming from the unique, streaky aspect to the lights. It looks like I'm using a long exposure, or there's some camera movement involved. And there is a streaky aspect, but it has nothing to do with long exposure. In fact, my settings were about 1/8,000th of a second for shot number one. So this is, yes, a double exposure of this image, which was the original photo shot with my 50mm at f1.2 and 1/8,000th of a second, mixed with a second exposure, which was taken, you'll probably be able to guess what it is when I show it to you. Any guess what that is? It's just an elevator door. It's the parking garage elevator where I parked. Later that day after the session when I was done and walking back. So I just noticed that the metal doors of the elevator had a pretty interesting streaky effect and were highly contrasted. So that's the biggest thing you want to look out for with double exposures, is having really high contrast aspects of the images to play off one another, at least in one shot. Sometimes you can get away with really intense silhouette or high contrast, really bright against a really dark aspect in one frame, and then the second shot maybe being something more just even. But if you can get high contrast in two different shots, that's really where magic like this can occur. So this is literally just the picture of the elevator door shot with my 24mm at f1.4. All I did was pull this image up in my camera viewfinder, frame it up with the elevator exactly how I wanted in terms of the framing of his eyes and her face. Most of where I want you to look is more or less her face. So I kind of framed it right there in between this little pocket, and that's it. So I think I did have to remove a little bit of the door here. Yeah, I had to Photoshop that bit out in the final image. Now, you're looking at this is actually a JPEG. That's why the edit settings are mostly zeroed out. That's because, unfortunately, the Canon R3 does not let you retain a raw file end result in your double exposures. So that is a huge letdown for me, but I'm willing to make the trade-off because the R3 is so great in almost every other way compared to the R6 or R5. Still, it does require me to go in and take the raw file here and the raw file here and merge them in Photoshop using the screen blending mode, which is super annoying. I really prefer to have a raw file end result to edit from, but these are my edits for the raw files before I blended them. The big benefit to Canon against every other camera manufacturer right now is still the fact that you see the first shot of the double exposure as like at 50% opacity layered on top of the second shot. And that makes a huge difference in your decision making in the moment as you're framing up this second shot. A lot of people are tempted to just go right into Photoshop and play around with all kinds of different second image shots in the exposure. But the problem with that is if it's not made with the first image in mind, like literally stacked on top, the compositions never feel very connected, at least not to me. And that's why a lot of double exposures tend to have just a general blanket of leaves or flowers or just huge textural things instead of stuff that's really composition specific, like this shot with these line streaks. So that's it. I used my gain stage preset. Nothing crazy about the editing. Those were the settings and the lenses. That's the shot. So if you have any other questions, definitely let me know. Yeah, I'd love to hear them. And let me know if you create something similar or use this as a starting point to create something totally different. That always makes me really happy to see. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will be back soon. Bye, everyone.